So I left this quote up just as we were gathering. This is one of my favorites by a gentleman I'm going to introduce you to if you don't already know him. This was spoken in 1954 by Jacques Ellul. Remember that name and read some of his books or articles. I'll introduce him more later, but for now it sets the stage. The denizen of the technological state of the future will have everything his heart ever desired, except his freedom. So, freedom is the key thing here, and that's really what I want to talk about. The Bible tells us to live as free people, and it's for freedom that Christ died for us. Okay? So we are supposed to be living in that freedom. And, Galatians warns us not to get burdened again by that yoke of slavery. Well, what does slavery look like for us in the modern world? Thomas Merton, the famous Catholic hermit, he put it really succinctly when he said the simplest definition of freedom is the ability to do the will of God. And I'm going to stick with that one. There's a lot of people define freedom lots of different ways. And in the modern world, freedom is, I can do this, you can't tell me what to do, your truth is not my truth, okay? So there's a lot of push to live the way you want to, the way you feel. But I think this definition really hits it on the nail. And that is, we are free to do the will of God. Ellul also said, when we become conscious of that which determines our life, then we can, in other words, do something about it. We can achieve the highest degree of freedom when we know what's directing the direction of our lives. So that's another thing that we have to think about. So we do have work to do. My guiding verse with all this is Ephesians 2:10. And you all know it, but the part that I'm focused on is we are God's handiwork. Some versions say masterpiece. We're created in Christ Jesus to do what? To do good works that he has pre-planned in advance. And when you start to think about that, you realize, well, I have a small amount of time. In fact, I don't know how much time I have, but God prepared things for me to do, right? And my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, and I got to get it done, So I use that as a guiding verse as I encourage myself and others to be what I call a tech boss. Now, we've all heard of the term FOMO, and FOMO is the fear of missing out, right? Missing out on the next iteration of our device, the next operating system, what our friends and family are posting online, and that sort of thing. We all have felt that, It sometimes comes through as a design or as a sharing imperative. We feel compelled to get on somewhere and share something, in this modern world. Well, I really want to help us turn FOMO upside down. I want us to develop a healthy fear of missing out on Ephesians 2:10, the good works that God has prepared in advance. Okay, I can't think of anything sadder than somebody going through their life and not getting those good works done, the ones that God has earmarked for them. Can't think of anything more that would grieve the soul, So that's what I'm encouraging people with. There's a 3-step process that I've sort of developed. And by the way, this is not me, the expert, telling you, what to do. And I'm also not out to shame you as well, because I am right there with you. I have a stepson that's struggling with these issues because we gave him a phone too soon. I struggle with doing it in front of my 3 daughters, We all are on this journey together, okay? Nobody is, better at this than anybody else because there's no one way to do this, okay? Just like there's no one way to walk with the Lord. We have Scripture to guide us, but there's no one solution here. So what I've come up with is just studying this stuff for the last 5 or 6 years. I took a deep dive into technology. What does it actually mean? Where did it come from? What do people have to say about this in the last 100 years or 200 years? And I'm just excited to share it with you. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But first, we'll renew our understanding of technology. Then we'll hit that reset button. I like the Staples button that they made. You just punch it. It's easy. It's done. But in this case, it's resetting, our settings, if you will, our relationship to technology. And then all with a view to releasing our potential, okay? That is what we are trying to do here. We're trying to live the human adventure as people who can do the will of God, okay? And I don't need to tell you how amazing it is when you're actually in the will of God, doing those good works that he has pre-planned. So the first discovery that I made was that technology is actually all about us. I discovered what I would consider the true meaning of technology. It's all about us, just not in that passive, selfish, distracting, misleading way, you know. And so I dug a little deeper, wanted to know what the word meant, where it came from, the etymology, etc. So these are some basic definitions of technology: the practical application of knowledge, a manner of accomplishing a task, okay? This one caught my attention: the sum of the ways in which social groups provide themselves with the material objects of their civilization. So that got me thinking, where do these material objects come from? Well, obviously they come from us. The Greek techne means art and skill, craft in work, a system of making or doing. And when you dig even deeper, you find that the root there is tex, T-E-K-S. And please remember that, okay? Just remember, tex. And that, it literally means to weave or fabricate. And we get words like hatchet, carve, join, build, tectonic, text, toil. All those words come from the root of technology. Examples would be the literal weaving of a basket, the building of a home. Think of all the different technologies that have to come together to make your dwelling. Sculptures, art, you know, of all kinds involves technology, tools that we will use to produce that beauty and that meaning. Technology can be a screen, but it doesn't have to be. I like having fun with my kids. They'll say, "Can I play on tech, Dad?" And I hand them a pencil, you know. Because pencils are technology, right? The paper they're going to write on, the clothes that they're wearing. It's all technology. It's all tools that we have produced to make our life more useful, more comfortable, and more purposeful, perhaps. There's technology abounding in this picture as well, right? The board telling the score, the basketball hoop, the basketball itself, and obviously the people, right? The people, we are technology. So to sum up that section, the heart of technology is the human art and skill used to make or build objects for human living. Okay, technology is how we use the tools that we make, as well as how we use the tools that others have made. Okay, so it's really both. Okay, you can make something with your art and skill, but you can also, it's also how you handle other people's tools. So the second discovery I made was that God is the original technician. And I just mentioned it. We are God's technology. It's useful to think in this way to help us understand how we can manage technology. And we all know the verse from Psalm 139. But a couple of Mother's Days ago, my pastor was reading this. And, you know, some of the words caught my attention. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Okay, my frame was not hidden from you. We're seeing the language of invention in that passage. Formed, knitted, made, woven, saw, written. So I took a closer look at the word knit. It comes from the Hebrew, sakach, okay? And as a Scotsman, I can do that gutturally. You know, you have to, you know. But it's sakach, and it means to hedge or fence about, shut in. But it also has this meaning of to weave together. And that clicked for me because I had already studied the word technology. The word technology and the word for how God put us together in the womb are the same. They're the same root, okay? So I felt like that was an argument for saying, hey, God is the original technician, the master technician, if you will. Charles Spurgeon puts it this way: we are covered in God cloth. What tapestry can equal the human fabric? And you might not be able to see it with the lights, but that's a fluorescent microscopic view of human skin cells. Very beautiful. What tapestry can equal the human fabric? So our ability to create and harness technology comes from God. And what do? But turn it right around and, as an act of worship, give it back to Him in the things that we make, the things that we use, and how we go about doing our kingdom business. And because I was just at a conference highlighting intelligent design, everybody in this room needs to know about the Discovery Institute, okay, as Ron mentioned. okay? We're a nonprofit institute. We're not out to make money, but we're out to spread awareness and resources about the evidence we're finding in the natural world that would suggest design. No scientist can prove God 100%, okay? That's not what science is about. Science is the study of the natural world, but it reveals hallmarks of the designer, okay? And depending on what kind of scientist you are, what kind of background you are, you're going to either ignore those hallmarks of design or try to explain them inside your worldview, which, let's face it, since Darwin's time, typically is scientific materialism, right? So they rule out anything that's outside matter and energy to explain what we see around us. But I'm telling you, you have faith as a Christian, right? But if you want to bolster that faith and support that faith as well as be able to answer questions, you got to read some of our stuff. You got to watch some of our videos. Stephen Meyer, my boss, I've been helping him for 10, 11 years to put out this information. Do you think we're going to get this on NPR? Heck no. PBS going to do a special on us or our work? Heck no, okay? We don't have the channels like that to be able to put this stuff out, okay? And that's sort of by design, I guess, We're in the world but not of it, and we know it's going to be harder to get to the truth than it might be otherwise. So anyway, I'm blabbing and not even showing you the animation here, but let me go back because the other one is especially good. That's the bacterial flagellar motor. But this one, if it decides to come up, is called the kinesin molecular motor. And this literally walks things, carries things through, tubules and sections of the cell. In Charles Darwin's day, the cell was a globule of protoplasm, okay? That's what they didn't know what was inside the cell. Well, in the last 100 years, we have discovered it, okay? And we have the microscopes now. We have the technology to figure out what's in here, okay? Darwin and his contemporaries knew nothing about what was in here. But we have literal factories of machines inside us right now doing these operations. Here's the bacterial flagellar motor. My boss calls it high-tech and low-life. It's got everything you would require to move something through liquid, okay? Just like an outboard motor, okay? And here we are, many eons later, making this technology, but someone was doing it first. So that's just a couple of examples, but do yourself a favor and look into the Discovery Institute and my boss, Stephen Meyer, and the arguments he has made. Talk to me. I'll get you a book. I'll send you links, whatever. But it's really good stuff to support your faith and the faith of those that are around you. So my third discovery I made was a gentleman named Jacques Ellul. And his name is fun to say, but his work is just amazing. And he has a concept that he unpacks in his books called technique. And I'm going to unpack that for you today, and you're going to see big tech in a new light. But Mr. Ellul, he was a French sociologist, a theologian, and a philosopher of technology. He was born in 1912, died in 1994, so his life spanned the 20th century. Imagine the technological innovation he witnessed and was part of. He wrote 50-plus books, 1,000-plus articles. I've only read a couple of his books and a handful of his articles, So I'm looking forward to a lifetime of study on Mr. Ellul. And my favorite thing about him was that he loved the Lord, He was a guy that studied technology intensely, but also loved the Lord. And so half of his books are about the problem, half of them are about the solution. And as I say here, he explored the consequences of modern technology to humanity and the Christian's role in the technological society. And I'll point that out later. He didn't think Christians should sit on the sidelines in this conversation. He wanted us front and center, and he explains why. So anyway, that's Mr. Ellul. He says the ensemble of practices by which one uses available resources to achieve values. That's what he calls technique, okay? The ensemble of practices. Now, this is a lot simpler than you might imagine, okay? Technique is just the way of accomplishing a task, okay? Think of making your bed, cooking a turkey, okay, getting something done around the house. We all have our own way of approaching that task, our own methods, okay? And that's what technique is, okay? And, before the Industrial Revolution, technique was a straightforward part of life. Nobody really thought about it. It was just what you did with your tools. If you needed to change a tool to accomplish your task, you did it. But you were in charge of doing it. That was your decision, right? So it was a straightforward part of life. It was localized. What somebody did in one country was going to be different than what somebody did in another. There were no international standards. There were no big tech companies kind of guiding it internationally. It was various. It developed slowly at a human pace. It was concerned with beauty as well as function. Now, after the Industrial Revolution, as machines started to take hold, factories were growing bigger and bigger. They were figuring out how to do things through machines. Machines began to replace human muscle. And as we can see coming towards today, human mind as well, right? And we'll talk about that. But they began to replace human muscle. People started converging on where they were building these factories, and that became cities, okay? Humans began to conform to machines. And technique at that point entered every sphere of life. The more we gathered around machines and our technology, the more we had to standardize and consolidate to make things work. Ellul says technique became the new milieu. That's a favorite word for Frenchmen, milieu. Okay, and milieu is just environment, right? It became the environment that we were required to exist in. And what did it replace? It supplanted the old milieu, which was nature. Okay, we all used to work in the fields and we were in the woods all the time and we were in the country because there really wasn't cities, At one point, there were communities, but they grew bigger and bigger. So, modern technique then, here are some hallmarks of modern technique. It seeks out what is most rational and artificial. It renders traditional morality obsolete. Think about it. If you're trying to find the one best way, and morality is saying something else, you're going to ignore morality, as technique. You're going to move to the best way possible, and morality will get out of the way. It produces a universe of objects, machines, and material things. It aims exclusively at what is measurable. Technique can't do much if it can't be measured, okay, if it can't measure something. So you go from the qualitative to the quantitative, okay? It relieves old restraints. We can all think of, a dozen ways right now why technology has bettered our life, okay? From ultrasounds to soda machines, okay? Whatever, It's made our life better in so many ways, relieved old restraints, but we have to remember that it has imposed new ones. Okay, and that sometimes we don't realize that or forget it. It diminishes human autonomy. Okay, what is a machine going to do with the autonomy of an individual? Oh, well, let's do it this way, But the machine's already set to do it another way. It also ignores our spontaneity. It doesn't like spontaneity. Think about your phone, right? If you're going to do something but want to do it differently another time or change your mind, well, technique is moving along at a certain direction and doesn't really do that for you. In a technological society, then, technique is the way that we can lose our freedom. Ellul says this, at stake is our very life, and we shall need all the energy, inventiveness, imagination, goodness, and strength to triumph over this predicament. So, who controls technique in the digital age? Remember, at one point, it was the humans that were controlling it because it was their technique. It was their methods that they were working with their tools to produce things, artisans, workshops, okay? But who controls it today? Who controls it in the modern age, the digital age? Here are some icons to make you think. Okay, these are the big five, but obviously there are many companies that make up collectively big tech. But these are the companies that are now in charge of steering you down that road of technique, okay? It's not really us anymore, okay? Unless you are still one that is working in the fields and you're using your own tools, okay? It's really going to be big tech that's governing this. Here are some examples of how big tech is governing the methods, the techniques, by which we access information, connect with other people, entertain ourselves, get news, current events, shopping, medical, fitness, I mean, you name it. Okay? Can you think of one area in your life that is not somehow governed by big tech? Okay? Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it's getting harder. So, a couple of examples, and you'll be able to, by the end of this, think of a million examples. Later, when you go home today, you'll be like, oh, that's technique. Seeing how a company or an entity can shape you and your beliefs or your values or your methods. But here's just a few to get you going. You remember when the iPhone had a home button? Okay, this wasn't too long ago, maybe 5 years ago. Well, they took the home button away. Now, they're within their rights to do that, right? This is a device they've made, okay? Thought it was my device. Well, it's their device, right? They can do that. But what does that result in? Okay, again, very small thing, but now we're touching our phone a little bit more. Okay, it's a very tactile experience. It's almost like caressing, okay, an object, okay? And you know what it's like when you touch something a lot, it has more value to you. So I'm not saying that's why they did it, but it's a byproduct of that decision to move forward, to take away that home button. We like to just press the button, get back to where we were, okay? But now you've got to kind of, do this sort of thing. Another idea would be Netflix or any streamer nowadays. They took away our ability to have some time between content to say, well, should I go to bed? Should I speak to my spouse? Should I do my homework? Should I read my Bible? Well, no. You get 3 seconds, it just goes, and on to the next thing, right? You don't even get to feel guilt about what you're watching, okay? Maybe that's a good thing, but no. So they took this away from us, and I felt, grieved at this personally because I used to work at the movie theater, and I would see the credits roll on all the movies. I love movies, but the credits rolling were a gentle way to bring me back from suspending my disbelief. And I don't know, I like the music, I didn't necessarily read the names of people, but it just gave you time to come back to reality, right? Well, we don't get that with streamers, okay? In fact, you can't really navigate anywhere in these streaming platforms without something playing, And so I almost have to go to something, and then go to add to or something so that nothing's moving until I decide what to do next. But anyway, they have given people the option to adjust this now, probably because there was a lot of complaints. But you see, this is technique. This is them shaping how they want you to access this material. What choice do we have? Well, here's another one. Okay, a very small thing, in fact, physically minute, okay? But it's on millions of people's phones. Apple introduced it with the latest update, okay? And we don't really have a choice, okay? Now we're all walking around with a pregnant man inside our pockets, okay? That's awkward. And what do we do about that, okay? Do we say no? Well, I'll tell you what happens when you say no to big tech in a moment here. But again, a small thing, but it's also monumental, isn't it? Okay? There's tons of other examples. Fitness trackers. You used to just go for a walk because you knew it was good for you. Now, what do? We've got data, we've got charts, we can send it to our physician, we can post it to Facebook. Look, I did 3 miles, yay me, When really, all you had to do was take a walk and just be glad that you were, keeping yourself healthy, So we've gone from the informal to the formal. We've gone from qualitative to quantitative. Those are some of the hallmarks of technique. Movie tickets, okay? You walk into the movie theater. I did this a few months back. I come out of the elevator, excited to speak to a human post-COVID, back to the movie theater, and the person didn't really want much to do with me. They didn't welcome me back with a smile. This was a young lady who, there was not much emotion going on, gladness to see another human being. It was more like, here's the screen that you can order your tickets, okay? And when I had a confused look on my face, she said, well, somebody can come over and help you, So they're willing to help me work with a screen, but they're not willing to have that face-to-face interaction, which is so precious, even if it's a few seconds. You know what it's like. 5-10 seconds of a positive interaction with somebody is enough to lift your day, right? Or enough to give you a sense of hope, right? And so that was missing. I also walked into Taco Bell. Okay, I'm revealing things about me that aren't good, but I walked into Taco Bell. I know that's especially an insult in Texas, so sorry. But I live in Seattle. So Taco Bell, and what do they have? They have 3 kiosks, okay? And nobody is up front, okay, to talk to. So you got to get the attention of somebody who's busy in the back. What are they doing? They are attending to drive-through and mobile orders, right? Have you noticed this? The dining room has suffered. The dining room is where we used to gather, okay? Not a Taco Bell necessarily, but other restaurants, okay? We're missing the human connection, okay? These little tiny connections that we can have, they're not happening so much. Now, I'm not saying this is across the board. I'm not saying everybody is guilty of this. And I hold out hope for these youngsters that are in these restaurants. It's beautiful when you come across a young person who actually knows how to interact with a human being, right? They have customer service skills. That's another thing I could talk about an hour about. Those have plummeted too, in this age of distraction and screens. Anyway, so you can think of lots of examples. You call up a company, who are you going to talk to? Well, this has been happening for decades, but now it's an AI chatbot, right? Who might actually be able to fix your problem, okay? But there's no human. Now, I know we can't always have a human when we're calling for help, getting help with something, but it seems to be the standard now, right? Deal with our bot, and if you can't, then maybe we'll give you our phone number, okay? There's actually some companies that don't even provide you a phone number. I can think of one. I book travel for people at Discovery Institute and myself. It's called Black Lane. It's a car company, and they don't even offer you a phone number. You have to chat with them via screen. And I think, wow, that's something. We're at that point now. So anyway, lots of examples. Here's another one. If you've updated to iOS 16, you can see, these are actually great examples of technique, these updates, okay? And again, I'm not saying these are horrible things, okay? What I am saying is there are byproducts to this. There are things that this is doing to us. Look at the language they use, though. These big tech companies. All new, enhanced, deeper intelligence, seamless, right? They want our life to be seamless. Well, that's not in the Bible, We're not supposed to have an easy, seamless existence. No. Actually, it's better if we don't, right? Because we're going to build that character we need to be resilient. But let iOS surprise and delight you throughout the day. They choose the pictures that I see now. I took a bunch, right? I have 16,000 pictures on my phone because I haven't, synced it up. But they're just going to choose randomly. Well, it's actually not randomly, is it? It's an algorithm they've built onto the machine, and they will show me my kids, right? And different things. So. And even in their mail program, right? Intelligent search improves your results. We're going to use synonyms for your search terms. What does that mean, right? We've already seen stories about Google and some of these big tech companies replacing words that you put in their search engine with more inclusive words, right? Words that they deem to be more appropriate. So we're already seeing big tech company messing with our language, okay? And this is them admitting and boasting that they'll do that in these updates. So who's in charge? Big tech's technique is subtle, okay? It's gentle, it's friendly. This doesn't hurt, okay? This really doesn't hurt. It's very easy, okay? It's meant to be casual. If we don't like their technique, what do the terms of service tell us to do? Have you guys read your terms of service? Who reads them, right? They're pages and pages long, legalese. But that's exactly why they know that you won't read them, okay? Because the lawyers wrote them. But inside the lawyer speak are some interesting phrases, right? By using this, you're agreeing to be bound by our terms. Okay? If you don't agree, don't use it. Get it back to the place you bought it, okay? Return it. Okay? And this is quite revealing, We have a relationship with these companies, but who's in charge? Should we trust companies? Here's a guiding question. Should we trust these companies with different values than us to dictate the best methods for us? Okay, I want you to be thinking about that, okay? And I'm thinking about that. We're all thinking about this. This is a journey. But the point I'm trying to make is let's go from being users of this tech to those who can boss it, right? To be in charge of it, use it as a tool. Tech used to be a means to an end, but now it's sort of an end itself, It's sort of the end result. It's what we're doing, We're not doing it to do something else, to do those good works. Well, And you might say, well, can't I just relax? Can I just watch something? Sure, do that. Rest, relax, but watch who's in charge and be in charge yourself. Okay, so we've talked about renewing our relationship with technology. Next would be examining, okay? As with anything you're trying to change in life, examine yourself, right? And then ask some questions, and then begin the purge. I like that word, the purge, okay? I know they made a movie of it, okay? Would not recommend watching it. It's a horror movie, okay? But purging things out of your life that don't need to be there, okay? And then just practicing it, okay? Just practicing it every day, waking up. Well, gee, I spent too much time doing that, but today I'm going to do it differently, okay? That's really all we can ask for. Ways of examining, well, first, what do we examine? We have to examine all the technology in our life. The gadgets, the subscriptions that you lose track of and don't remember you subscribe to, the platforms, the game systems, the services, okay? All of it. You've got to give yourself some time to examine it, okay? Companies, all the companies you're working with. Who are you working with, What kind of company are they? Okay, ask yourself, does this technology positively or negatively affect my energy, my relationships, my attitude, my time, my wallet, my memory? Okay, I'll leave those up for a minute. How many phone numbers do we remember? Well, we don't need to because it's all in our address book. How many birthdays do we remember to mark? Well, maybe we don't need to because Facebook brings it up and we just type in a post, seamless, We don't have to think. We don't have to remember. But God gave us the best supercomputer that will ever be made, and that is between our ears, okay? And I'll mention a few words on AI later, but AI does not hold a candle to human intelligence. And I venture to say it never will, okay? But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Another question you can ask, can I remember make is weave, right? Weave is make. Something useful for myself or others with this tech tool. Does this tech tool help me accomplish my kingdom business? And there's a reminder from Mark 12, right? What is our kingdom business? Ephesians 2:10 is the good works that God has pre-planned, okay, but all with a view to loving him with all we are and loving our neighbor as ourselves. Do you know your neighbor? Who are your neighbors? Okay? Can you reach your neighbor on your screen or can you reach them, face to face? These are all questions. And then we get to the purge, okay? We sell, we give away, we cancel, we kill anything that doesn't make the cut, okay? And speaking of killing and purging, I did put this up because, we just have to kind of see this visually. Like, I'm going to put Netflix to death. I'm going to kill Netflix in my life so that I can be a tech boss, okay? Whatever companies you're dealing with, it's going to be different than your neighbor, different than your spouse even, or your friends, okay? We're all going to have different companies that we've zoomed in on and have a relationship with. We have to decide that, okay? We've got to decide. Apple, okay? I'm an Apple guy, I have been for years, okay? They like when you're with them for a long time. They call it the Apple ecosystem, the walled garden, right? It's hard to come out of these things after you're immersed in it. So just think about it. Think about the companies you're with. There are alternatives to all of these now, okay? And the alternative as well is to not use them or not do that thing, okay, if it's taking away from your time to do those good works. So how would I describe being a tech boss? Okay, that's how I would define it. A person who uses technology as a means to do the will of God in his or her life, and one who has affirmed his or her freedom in the technological society. And remember, this did not happen overnight. Okay, it's going to take a while to adjust and to make changes. Here are some pointers on how to be a tech boss. And if you miss any of this, by the way, just send me an email or I can make this available. I think the church is recording it, so you can get back to these slides, don't worry. But one of the things I would recommend is taking the first and last hour of your day. Okay, I was practicing this recently, and it really is something good. But it's hard, isn't it? Not touching your phone for that first whole hour. Some people wake up with phones. They know what they were doing, right? When they added an alarm clock and a flashlight and all these little utilities to our phone. They want us to be holding it all the time, okay? But we can have that separation. In fact, practice separating from your phone. At least once a week, leave it at home, okay? And feel that awkwardness. Feel that strangeness. Feel that, wow, I'm missing something. And it's okay, okay? It's actually a good feeling. Ask anybody who's trying to come off of something. Withdrawal, right? You get that. My wife can tell you stories of summer camps that she's been a counselor. The first 48 hours of a no-phone camp, the kids are weeping. They're, walking around, like lost lambs. And get this, the parents are calling us, the camp counselors, saying, I'm going to call the police. I can't reach my kid, And so everybody's like, whoa, what is this, But after the first 48 hours, they start to feel that clarity. They start to feel that peace. They had better human interactions and dare say an interaction with God or two, So, and the other thing I'm challenging people is to think, okay? Now, this might be so, idiotic that I would even put this in. Well, what do you mean? I think all the time. Well, do you? Are you living reflexively or reflectively? There's a difference, right? Reflexively is, knee-jerk, right? Just kind of taking it as it comes. Reflectively would be to think on things as you're going through them, before you go through them, after you go through them. I came across a study, back in September. It was on thinking about thinking. Not a lot of people are doing this. There's a lot of scientific literature on the different types of thinking, but not a lot on the thinking about thinking. And they took over 250 participants in Hong Kong and England, college age. They sat them in a room one at a time. They couldn't bring their phone in. They couldn't eat. They couldn't get up. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't look out the window. They could just sit with their thoughts for 20 minutes. And they measured what they thought they would experience going in. They asked them, hey, how do you feel about this? What do you think you're going to get out of this? And they compared that to the exit survey. And what they found was across the board, regardless of culture, regardless of age or even length, because they did adjust it at times, people reported more interest, more engagement, less boredom than they thought they were going to have. Now, what is that? What's the takeaway? Well, if you think something's going to be boring, you're going to take steps to avoid it. Okay, so we are taking steps to avoid thinking these days. And these smartphones that we have in our pocket make it extremely easy, don't they? Okay, you're at the gas pump. You got 2 minutes to think. 2 minutes to consolidate your experience, to think ahead, to let your mind wander. You got 5 minutes on the John, okay? Okay, I'm the first to admit, I'll take it out in the bathroom, okay? You remember those bathroom readers they used to have, the books? Okay, where they would have all kinds of trivia in them and fun stuff. Well, those are not really bestsellers, anymore. They did come out with a 35th anniversary just last fall, but it's no bestseller because we have stuff, to keep us busy. So 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes here. I challenge you to think purposely without distraction for 20 minutes a day. Okay, and I've been practicing this myself since I wrote about this. I had a piece come out in the New York Post on January 1st, and it was just encouraging people to think. I felt stupid for putting out a piece about that. But as you know, the common has become uncommon, right? And so now we got to come back and remind us all what's best for us, what's good. Consider low or no screen solutions to problems. Do you have to use Google? I remember an ad that came out a few years back. This guy standing surrounded by the remnants of a party that he had arranged and put on, some kind of birthday party. And it was just him standing with his phone, and now he had to do cleanup, and he had to, organize what was next. And it was just an ad for the Pixel, the Google Pixel, Let Google do it was the catchphrase, right? Let Google do it. Don't do it yourself. Let Google do it, okay? I had to write about that because I get so mad when these companies try to hijack what we have and say that they're better at it. But consider, options without a phone, Do you really need your phone to get from point A to B? Remember maps? Okay? We almost are at a point where we have to teach kids how to read a map, right? And it's so ubiquitous now, GPS. Most people would laugh me out of the room and say, are you kidding me? That's a waste of paper, But what happens when our grid goes dark, right? What happens when your data connection is not working? What happens when you can't depend on big tech for those GPS signals? Well, then what? You're just going to look, like a lost lamb. So being prepared, I think. And I was just reminded of that just last night. Somebody mentioned map making or map reading, We've got to learn how to read maps again, Some of this low-tech stuff, Invest in some retro tech. My wife and I, at our house, we have a vinyl record player. Okay, we like to interact with that, have the kids play Grammy and Granddad's old records, as well as brand new ones that we've ordered. And it is Bluetooth, so it's kind of the best of both worlds. You're mixing technology. We have an old 1960s handheld phone, right, connected to the wall. It's not the rotary, but it's the punch button, We call it our mustard phone. It's a beautiful mustard yellow. And our children know how to use that to, get in touch if we're at the grocery store or whatever. So investing in some retro tech, I don't care what it is, just add it to your family so that you can. Another reason we do that is because it makes us appreciate where we're at now. Wow, they had to do that for that long to get that. It really gives us an appreciation of where we are. Another challenge would be to make Sundays screen-free. It could be any day of the week, but Sunday's a good day, right? Sabbath, okay? It's one of the things I talked about with Eric Metaxas. He actually brought it up. He said we need a Sabbath, again. We need a session where we're not connected to things, and we desperately need that. So Sundays are a good day to just put away the screens, for your kids and yourself. Okay, so we're getting towards the end here, but I have a few things to share about social media, and then I can take your questions and we can chat together about how best to start our Tech Boss journey. Do I keep a smartphone? Like, I'm asking, not you, but that's a question, right? Should I have a smartphone? Should I change it to one of these other competitors, like a Wise phone is out there? It has limited functionality, but it has just what you would think you would need to get by without the distraction. There's another one called the Light phone, or there's a variety of flip phones available still, or no cell phone, Is it possible to get through modern life without a cell phone? Well, give it a try. There's something called nudges. Consider adding a nudge or two to your environment or to your settings. Nudges are things you can do to reduce your dependence and your use on these phones. Did you know you can turn your phone grayscale? Raise your hand if you knew that. Okay, like 3 people. You can turn your phone grayscale. It drains all the color, all the life out of your phone. Everything's still there. You're still taking pictures in living color, but you don't see the color. And what do you think that's going to do? Yeah, get done what you need to be done, and then, who cares, right? No color. So that was such an extreme step, I couldn't even keep it up. My wife kept it up for longer than I did, but it's there. I can show you how to do it in the accessibility settings. Another thing is disabling notifications, right? We heard of a conversation where, they kept talking to this young person. The young person kept getting interrupted by these notifications that were popping up, beeping up, and so it interrupts our daily life. And we already have problems kind of, focusing nowadays, right, with everything going on around us. But how hard do you want to make it, Every beep, every notification is just going to pull you right out of what you were doing, okay? Unless you're just sitting there waiting for them, But you can disable most notifications, okay? And I would challenge you to do that. You can delete apps that are problematic for you. You can reduce reply expectations. That's simply telling people, look, you're not going to hear from me for a little while, okay? And it's okay, all right? We send this text and we expect an immediate reply. We don't know what they're doing, We don't know what we're interrupting. So reducing reply expectations is a good thing to do with your friends and your family, okay? It's okay that you won't hear from me during the hours of this, okay? Or while I'm at church. Do not expect me to see your message, So alternatives to giving your teen a smartphone. there's an idea kind of floating around where you can use a loaner phone, okay? You can have a family loaner phone. So if your kid is going somewhere and you do want to have them have that connection to you, then, and they're not around adults that have a phone where they could use that, consider a loaner, right? This is not your phone, okay? That way they're not going to put anything that they're hiding on there. They're not going to take many photos because it's not theirs, right? So this is just for your use during this time frame. There's non-smartphones out there as well, okay? We've got to stay away from the smartphones with kids under 18. That's my general guideline, okay? But I know that a lot of people have taken that step, okay? And we don't want to, we're not out to shame anybody. And if you've already done that, and your kid has a smartphone and they're 13 or up, well, start today, make some guidelines, have a contract with them. You are in charge, okay? And you have to set the times, the places, and the limits. If you don't, then curiosity is just going to take over, We heard a story from one of my colleagues about, their family, and they had a child. It wasn't the person we were speaking to, but it was one of their friends, and they had no idea, the parents, that the child was getting into all this social media until it's almost too late to pull it back. It's very, very hard at that point. So the more you can do at the front end, the better. And don't forget to set the right example yourself. I mean, if you're sitting there on your phone, if your kid sees that, they're going to, every time they see you on your phone, they're going to think it's an okay thing to do. So do it in private almost, Maybe that's why people pull it out in the bathroom, It's like the only place that they can check, And in that circumstance, maybe I would advocate that, because if it's in private, at least people are not seeing it and you're not distracting company and face-to-face interaction. Okay, a couple of words about social media just to wrap things up. I made a few graphics just to kind of highlight what they used to do in the olden days. The original status update was a letter if you couldn't be around a person, and the letters took a long time to get to someone, and then hearing back, so it could be days and days. We live in an age of instant, and so it's really good to appreciate not being instant, just to practice not being instant, and it's okay, The original friend request, right? Shaking hands, getting to know somebody, right? It has a lot more value than when you do it virtually, okay? The original like, right, was that thumbs up. We all like getting a thumbs up. But those virtual thumbs, we still seek them, but they don't mean as much. So social media today, it's prevalent, right? 72% of Americans are using some type of it daily. Caustic, meaning it's sort of an acid that's eating our civility away. A recent poll found that 76% of U.S. adults believe Facebook makes society worse, and I'm sure there's similar studies for all these platforms. It's unhealthy. Adolescents and young adults are in the midst of a mental health crisis. And a lot of us know this, and we think, what can I do? Well, just to start it yourself. Start in your own family, Make sure your own family's not in a mental health crisis. It's dangerous, okay? We've seen suicides. The teen suicide rate for 18 to 35, that is the leading cause of death, 18 to 35-year-olds. And you cannot tell me that our technology and our gadgets are not fueling that. I'm not saying it's the main factor, but they are certainly fueling it because it's how we have access to everything today. So social media can be dangerous. It can also be distracting. TikTok is the most engaged platform of them all. 52 minutes daily average. Somebody's on there. 26 hours a month. What could you do with a full extra day? I ask kids when I'm talking at youth groups on this. Here's a study in 2012. I imagine it's even worse now. A study out of the University of Maryland looked at the effects of mobile phone use on pro-social behavior. And what they found was that mobile phone use evokes feelings of social connectedness and the need to fulfill that. So when they get that virtually, they're less likely to want it offline. And they are less concerned about other people, this study found. So the more we think we're getting that social connection, the less we're going to seek it out and the less concerned we're going to be for others. back to TikTok just briefly. Okay, there's some of the stats you may or may not know. I won't even bother reading them all. TikTok is a huge one. And, it's like, okay, this has changed things a lot for our young people. Okay, whoops. There's just a quick graph just showing, the average use of TikTok compared to how long we're in school. I tossed in the bathroom there just to give context, okay? But we know we're spending so much time on this. But what does TikTok do? It erodes your attention span. These videos are designed to be 15, 30, 60 seconds, maybe, It's like boom, boom, boom. Where's the punchline, Eroding our attention span. Why do they want to read a book when they can just watch a really short video? It pushes the envelope, right? It's exceeding those safe limits that we have traditionally taught our youth. Decides for you what you'll watch. You just have to watch one video, and it's going to do the rest for you, right? The algorithm is going to serve it up, and that's gotten a lot of kids in trouble. They'll click on one thing out of morbid curiosity and boredom and anxiety, and then they're served that up for the remainder of their connection with TikTok. And that has led some kids to do these challenges, and some of these challenges have led to kids dying, There was a couple in Texas a few years ago. I'm talking 10-year-olds, and 12-year-olds who get a hold of this, Their brains cannot handle this. It builds a profile just based on randomness, right? Your curiosity at the time, your whims, how you feel at that moment. And it connects us to total strangers. We've got kids going live, and then 40-year-old adults are coming on and joining them and chatting them up, and it's like, what? This is connecting us to people we wouldn't normally associate with on the street. So 13. Why is 13 the magic number? Okay, 20 years ago or more, they arbitrarily chose 13 when they produced the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. This was 4 years before Facebook, 11 years before Snapchat, 16 years before TikTok, 13 they thought was fine. Well, is it still fine? We're seeing a great toll here because 13-year-olds, 14, 15, 16, they cannot handle it. Okay, this freedom, this level of a Pandora's box. In fact, one of the senators who was the original sponsor, wanted the age to be 16, but was thwarted by, guess who? The tech companies, as well as special interest groups that said, oh no, kids need access to information about abortion and, whatever they think kids need access to. And so they kept it at 13, even though one of the original sponsors wanted it to be 16. Just last month, the Surgeon General of the United States came out saying, you know what? 13 is too young. He recommends 16, 17, or 18, okay? And that's his quote there, okay? We recognize this skewed and often distorted environment of social media and how it's a disservice to many of our kids, And the way he came about that was he heard all the people's stories, mothers and fathers coming to him, telling him their story, We lost our child, when she got into this, and our son couldn't handle this peer pressure and this cyberbullying. It's like, 13, is just too young. So there is a growing trend to change that now, and that's a hopeful sign. It turns out that adolescents are uniquely vulnerable to habitual checking behavior, okay? 13 to 17-year-olds, the ones polled in this study, they found 78% checked at least hourly, and half of them were checking it almost constantly, just pulling it out. What's latest? What's new, And kids in that age range are uniquely vulnerable to this. A study that just came out last month, okay, this year, from JAMA Pediatrics found that habitual social media checking behaviors physically alter adolescent brains over time. Now, normal adolescent brains, okay, they're going to reach a peak of sensitivity to social feedback about 12, 13 years old, and then it starts to come down. So by 17, 18, they're less sensitive to that social feedback, either rewards or punishments. But they found with MRI scans across 3 years, this was a set of public school kids in North Carolina, they found that it does not stop that trajectory of social sensitivity, just keeps going instead of peaking and coming down. And it actually alters the brains of these young people. Kids become hardwired to seek out peer approval. They live for that peer approval. They don't know what to do without that peer approval. They're more susceptible to insecurity as well and accessible to bullying. Think, they're very moldable and they're very, eager to please and eager to get those rewards. And it can cause hypersensitivity to criticism as adults. So not doing any favors for our kids and the vulnerability and resilience we hope they can build. So, as I said, there's a growing trend. 18, National Review just came out with a cover story, keep them offline. Okay, the case for banning under 18 from social media. And the challenge to that, of course, is, well, how do we do that? Who is the first line of defense for our children? Us, right? The parents. No, we don't want the government to do what we should be doing. Now, it's nice to have it as a plan B. It's nice to have it as a backup, okay? We got your back, right? But after all, the government was designed for us to do our thing, right? It protects us to do our thing. They protect us so that we can protect what we love, okay? So there is a movement, but parents are the first line of defense. The National Review article mentioned some good points. It said, age restriction laws have been governing all of these activities for a long time. Why would we treat social media any differently? It's just as addicting. It's just as potentially dangerous. Has a lot of benefits. In fact, they compare it to the automobile, right? It's a good comparison, right? Get behind the wheel, but make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're of age. Make sure you have a license. Make sure your parents know what you're doing, okay? And your seatbelt is on. The best we could do at the dawn of the social media era 20 years ago is no longer good enough. Okay, that's another duh, but it takes policy leaders and folks in the government to realize this over time. You know what it's like. They don't put a stop sign in until 5 people have, been seriously hurt. It's the same kind of thing. Let's give our kids a chance to succeed. So, a few guidelines that I would recommend. Decide which platforms you're going to be on and which you aren't. Okay, don't cover them all. Don't even try. It'll make you exhausted. Set a time of day and a time allowance. I've seen out there recommended 30 minutes. If you're on social media for more than 30 minutes a day, it's a distraction to you, and try to reduce it. Now, there are exceptions. For myself, I'm on social media more than 30 minutes because I'm marketing our work about intelligent design and technology, okay? So if you're a marketer, obviously you're using it as a tech tool to get the word out, and you might say, well, you're causing the problem on the other end, right? Making people, and okay, but that's fair, but you do have to try to limit it to 30 minutes a day. And here are some questions you can ask before you post, okay? Before you share that thing you want to share. Why am I posting this? Why do my social media contacts deserve to see this? I know that sounds harsh, but you have to think about it that way. Does everybody need to know I just did this? We're in this age where we all can share, Can I share this information a different way? Maybe I'll just chat about it on Sunday or out at lunch or what have you. What does sharing this content say about me? Here are some others. How could the company use this to make profit? Remember, every move you make digitally is recorded by these big tech companies. Nothing goes to waste. From the type of machine you're using, to the length you hover over something before you click it, to the obvious things like the words you say and post, pictures of your kids, And we're now getting to an age with AI where somebody can take any front-facing image of somebody and turn it into pornography. That is the age we're living in right now. So it behooves us to ask these questions. And if you're unsure about any of these questions, pray on it. Sleep on it, You don't have to share. I tell people, nothing happens on social media that isn't happening offline. So why are you on it, is the thing. And I'm not saying that to shame. I'm just asking the question, right? Okay, so time to release our God-given potential, okay? That's what I'm doing this for. We have one self, right? We are unique, okay? And I know it goes without saying, but the ideas you have and the skills you have and the gifts you have, nobody else will have it in that same way, that same fashion, that same time, okay, that same place. You are unique. And like I said at the beginning, it grieves us to realize that somebody could go their life without doing those good works, without developing the skills and talents that God has given us. We are unique, okay? We have to remember that. Okay, one life to live as well, right? Every moment you spend virtually is a moment less that you can spend in real life. All right, so living out the human adventure. Here's a couple of things to think about. Your inner circle, okay? Live in your inner circle, all right? We're now turning to our outer circle to live, but live within your inner circle, those who are going to love you most authentically, right? Your family, your close friends, your relatives, your youth leaders, teachers. That's the first two circles there, okay? Our outer circle would be people we barely know, new friends, online influencers, strangers, semi-strangers. Our youth are turning to the outer circle to satisfy things like they're lonely, or they're angry, or they're anxious, or they're bored, or they're scared. They're going to the outer circle. Well, we have to encourage our youth and ourselves to stay in that inner circle, you know. Turn to somebody who really does care about you, okay? Not having the illusion of that, but who actually does. So this is, I found, a useful way to think about it. Live in your inner circle. Doesn't mean the people in the outer circle don't matter, but spend less time with them, okay? Give less of yourself to them. Okay, and just a quick reminder, I'm not going to read all of these, but the Bible is very clear on the fact that we need to live life with each other, okay? And there's plenty of Bible verses there to support that. We need other human beings, okay? And we also need nature. Here's my friend John Muir, fellow Scotsman. He came to America when he was 11 too, just like me, okay? He went to Wisconsin, and I went down to Texas. So different lives, but, you know, I've been studying him lately, and he's got a lot to teach us about technology and the value of nature. He loved the Lord. He had an intelligent design perspective. When you read his work, you do not see the evolutionary language of Darwin, you know, millions of years this and millions of years that. He had a healthy, intelligent design perspective, but he almost went blind at one point. God got a hold of him in a dramatic way. He was all set to be an inventor, right, for his vocation, for his life. And God got a hold of him through an accident he had. And this is what he said after 2 months being blind in a dark room recovering. As soon as I got out into heaven's light, I started on another long excursion. This was a 1,000-mile trek from Wisconsin to the Gulf, making haste with all my heart to store my mind with the Lord's beauty. I bade adieu to my mechanical inventions, determined to devote the rest of my life to the study of the inventions of God. So we can take several cues from that, from Mr. John Muir. All right, well, I've reached the end. This is what Ellul had to say that was so encouraging to me. He said, we stand uniquely at the intersection of this material world and the eternal world to come, right? As Christians, we have that unique perspective. So we have our duty to testify to the reality of both worlds and to affirm our freedom as well as help others affirm their freedom as well. Thanks for having me today.